April 2nd, 1878. A narrow mountain road between Milford and Carrigart in County Donegal was just beginning to lighten at dawn when the Earl of Leitrim's carriage made its way toward his estate. Within minutes, gunfire would break the quiet morning, leaving the Earl, his clerk, and his driver dead on the roadside. The question people still ask is what pushed 3 tenant farmers to take such a step, and why the Earl had become so widely feared that many locals later viewed his death as justice. The official report labeled it murder. People in Donegal saw it differently, though the full truth was more troubling than either side claimed. Ireland in 1878 lived with constant strain. The Great Famine had ended decades earlier, but its impact still touched every home. Over 1 million had died. Another 1 million left for America, and the population never recovered. Those who stayed lived under a harsh landlord system that took everything it could from working families and offered nothing in return. Large estates were held by English or Anglo-Irish landowners who often never visited their properties, while local farmers had no rights and could be removed from their homes without warning or compensation. A poor harvest meant going hungry. A rent increase meant losing everything. Speaking out risked retaliation. Donegal, in the northwest, faced even tougher conditions. The land was rocky, the winters hard, and many residents still spoke Irish as their first language. Life was difficult, and frustration ran deep. It was into this tense environment that William Sidney Clemens, the 3rd Earl of Leitrim, took control of more than 94,000 acres across 3 counties. Born into wealth in 1806, he collected a large yearly income from rent and controlled entire villages. His authority over people's lives was absolute, and his reputation for harsh rule grew quickly, even among other landlords. Accounts from the time describe him as a stern man with cold eyes and a commanding presence. He never married, though he kept a long-time companion, and he involved himself directly in every decision on his estates. Instead of relying on agents like most landowners, he visited properties himself, confronted tenants, and made choices that determined whether families stayed housed or were forced out. Many stories from the period describe him evicting families who fell behind on rent by only a few days, burning cottages, and refusing to show leniency during hard years. Several women later reported mistreatment, though most stayed silent due to the norms of the time. His most feared actions were mass evictions. In 1866, he cleared entire areas near Milford, leaving families homeless at the start of winter. No payment plans, no extensions, no help. One tenant, Michael McCourt, watched his home torn down while pleading for time to find shelter. He was arrested for standing on land that had been his only hours earlier. His infant child died from the cold shortly after. Stories like this passed from home to home. A widow forced out after her husband's death. A young farmer beaten for questioning a rent hike. A teenage girl who returned home weeks after being called to the Earl's manor, exhausted and shaken. Locals began calling him the Black Earl. Priests spoke against him, and songs mocking his actions spread, but the law stood with the landowners, and the people had no legal path to defend themselves. By the mid-1870s, a shift was underway. Movements calling for Irish rights had been suppressed, but their ideas remained. Secret rural groups formed, using threats and occasional violence to push for better treatment of tenants. Notes signed by Captain Moonlight warned harsh landlords to change their behavior. Those who ignored the warnings sometimes returned to damaged property or frightened workers. The Earl received many such letters but ignored them all. When one detailed warning arrived in 1877, he laughed it off, saying the writers were too afraid to act. His clerk urged him to take it seriously, but he refused. Meanwhile, 3 local farmers were reaching a breaking point. Michael Hurrott, Michael McKelwey, and Neil Shields had watched their neighbors suffer for years. They talked quietly among themselves and eventually began planning a direct response. They studied the Earl's travel routine, chose a secluded spot for an attack, and accepted the risks they would face. The winter of 1877 into 1878 was especially harsh. Heavy rains ruined crops, and many families knew they would miss rent day. Appeals for help were denied. In January, the Earl ordered the removal of 23 families near Milford. Workers arrived at dawn, cleared people from their homes, and tore the houses down. Hurrat, a man who had always paid on time and supported order, watched this and felt something shift inside him. In February, a 14-year-old girl named Mary Gallagher visited the Earl's estate to discuss her family's late rent. Her father was sick and could not go. She returned hours later shaken and would not talk about what happened. Her mother found her crying, clothes damaged and bruised. When her parents considered reporting it, they realized they had little chance of being believed. The story moved quietly through the community and eventually reached Shields. He visited the family, saw the girl's distress, and concluded that waiting for officials to act was pointless. Shields spoke with McKelwey. McKelwey had just received notice of a sudden 20% rent increase that would force his family into deeper hardship. Together they approached Hurrat. They discussed whether this would make them criminals or something closer to fighters standing up for their community. They knew the dangers. They also believed that doing nothing would lead to the same end. They gathered old muskets, watched the Earl's route, and rehearsed their plan. They also realized the Earl always traveled with his clerk, John McKim, and his driver, Charles Buchanan. Both were local men, not oppressors. But the attackers concluded there was no way to carry out their plan without risking their lives as well. They chose April 2nd, 1878. That morning began quietly in Donegal. Mist hung in the air as the Earl's servant prepared his carriage. He set out shortly after sunrise with his clerk and driver. A few miles from Milford, the road narrowed through a wooded area with tall trees and stone walls. It was the perfect spot for the ambush the three farmers had prepared. The men waited with their muskets behind a stone wall near a sharp turn. Around 7:05 a.m., they heard the carriage approaching. As it reached the bend, McKelwey fired the first shot, hitting the Earl through the carriage window. Shields fired next, striking McKim in the shoulder. Buchanan struggled to steady the horses before being hit by a Harrod shot. The Earl tried to climb out of the carriage with a pistol in his coat, but his injury prevented him from drawing it. He stepped onto the road and called out in distress. The three men came out from their hiding place. Some later accounts say the Earl begged for his life. Others say he did not. The investigation confirmed that additional close-range shots followed. By 7:10 a.m., William Sidney Clemens, the third Earl of Leitrim, was dead at age 72. His clerk, badly hurt but alive, witnessed the entire event. John McKim is the only one who survives the attack, and his account will later become central to the case. Charles Buchanan dies within minutes, never waking. The three attackers stand in the morning light, looking at what they have done. They have taken 3 lives, and there is no feeling of victory, only the heavy realization that nothing will ever be the same. "We need to go," Shields tells the others. Shots could have been heard. They slip into the forest and follow the escape paths they planned earlier. Behind them, the Earl's horses stand restless, and dark stains mark the road. McKim pulls himself along the ground toward a nearby home, losing strength but fighting to reach help. The first person to reach the scene is Patrick O'Donnell, a farmer heading to market. He turns a corner and stops in shock. The carriage is abandoned, and 2 bodies lie across the road. He rushes to the nearest house to raise the alarm. Within half an hour, a crowd forms, and word spreads quickly. The Earl is dead. Someone has stopped him on the road. People react in different ways. Some are startled by the violence. Others feel something else, relief and even quiet celebration. In pubs that night, locals talk openly, raise glasses, and sing new verses about the end of feared landlord. One man remarks that if the killers were ever caught, half the county would have to stand with them. Authorities take the event very seriously. The Royal Irish Constabulary moves fast. To them, this is more than the death of a landowner. It is a direct strike at the structure that governs the country. Inspector William Burke arrives by mid-morning. He is known for his careful work and neutrality. What he finds unsettles him. The site shows planning and coordination. The killers chose the place well and worked together. This was not sudden anger. It was a planned execution. McKim, treated for his injuries, identifies the attackers. He saw their faces and knows they were local. Burke realizes the suspects are likely still nearby, protected by a community that sees them as protectors, not criminals. People refuse to talk. No one admits to hearing anything or seeing anyone. Many respond with quiet resistance. One farmer tells Burke, "He was a hard man. Maybe someone was harder." Burke understands the message. Locals have decided they will not help bring these men in. They will not defend someone they believe treated them unfairly. Burke begins a slow work of gathering what evidence he can. Time matters. The longer the suspects stay hidden, the more their story grows into legend, and legends are difficult to chase. The investigation becomes one of the most intense in Ireland. The British government offers a large reward for information. More officers arrive in Donegal. Informants are approached. Pressure is applied. Still, the community closes itself tightly. Burke conducts hundreds of interviews. He builds descriptions from McKim's testimony, studies earlier threats sent to the Earl, and creates a list of possible suspects. Hurrah, Shields, and McKelwey all appear on that list, along with many others who had reasons to resent the Earl. Without cooperation, narrowing the list proves difficult. A sudden turn comes in late April, when James McShane, a small-time offender, approaches Burke offering information. McShane wants leniency and some of the reward money. He says he heard Shields discussing the plan in a pub. His details match known facts. Burke believes he has something solid at last. On May 15, 1878, officers arrest Shields at his farm during a dawn operation. Shields does not resist. His wife and children shout as he is taken away. 2 weeks later, McShane gives more statements that lead to McKelwey's arrest. McKelwey is found hiding with a musket and gives up without fighting. He refuses to speak. Hurrah avoids capture longer. He moves through the mountains among people willing to shelter him. Burke increases pressure on suspected helpers, making arrests for small offenses and trying to break the network protecting him. The tactic has the opposite effect. Community support for the accused men grows stronger. Local groups raise money for their defense. Priests criticize how officers are handling the case. Newspapers begin questioning whether the Earl's death should be viewed strictly as murder or as a reaction to long-standing abuse. Court proceedings highlight wide divisions in the country. The prosecution argues that no matter who the victim was, killing is a crime that threatens stability. The defense takes another path. They challenge the identification, reminding the court that McKim was badly injured and may have been confused. They challenge McShane's motives, pointing out his debts and contradictions. They introduce testimony about the Earl's harsh treatment of tenants, presenting a long record of evictions and mistreatment. Though the judge says the victim's character does not change the nature of the crime, the jury hears the larger picture. Public opinion swings in favor of the accused. Hurrah is finally caught in July near Letterkenny. With all 3 men in custody, the trial can move forward. The trial opens on November 4th, 1878. People crowd into the courthouse. Supporters gather outside. Officials worry about possible unrest. McKim testifies first, firmly identifying the 3 men. He recounts the attack and grows emotional when describing Buchanan's final moments. Next, McShane takes a stand. His account supports McKim's version and claims he overheard conversations about the attack. The defense takes apart McShane's reliability. They reveal his financial issues and his legal troubles. They highlight contradictions in his story. By the time they finish, his testimony appears weak. The defense does not put the accused men on the stand, but brings forward many witnesses who speak about the Earl's long record of harsh policies. These stories paint a picture of suffering that is hard for the jury to ignore. On November 21st, the judge tells the jury to decide solely on whether the accused men committed the act, not on the Earl's conduct. The jury deliberates for 7 hours. They return with a verdict that surprises officials. Not guilty. The courtroom erupts. Families embrace the freedman. Outside, people celebrate late into the night. Fires are lit across Donegal. Songs fill the countryside. Officials consider trying again, but legal protections make it impossible. No further charges move forward. The 3 men return home and live quietly. They never publicly discuss the incident, but everyone knows what happened, and many locals see them as defenders of their community. The killing of the Earl sends shockwaves across Ireland and Britain. It exposes how deep the frustration with the landlord system has become. When a jury refuses to convict men widely believed to be responsible, It shows that many no longer trust the system governing rural Ireland. British leaders increased security, but soon pushed reforms. The Land League rose, tenants gained rights, and estates shifted into local hands. The attackers entered folklore, while the Earl's heirs eased conditions. The site became symbolic, and historians still debate its meaning. The event reshaped Ireland and left families divided for generations.